Hi guys, welcome back. So this week I wanted to talk about anxiety with moving to university or student accommodation in general. I suppose if you're watching from another country, it might be your college, like in America, or maybe you're going to a private school or like a boarding school or something, and you have to like stay away from home. So I've recently finished my foundation year at uni and stayed in student accommodation for the first year. The student accommodation I stayed in, we had our own bedrooms and bathrooms, and then it was like a shared kitchen communal area. I was on a floor with 7 other girls I'd never met before. I briefly spoke to one of them through a group chat that the university had directed me to. And I was really scared. Not so much about moving away from home. I'm quite an independent person. That never really bothered me. It was the living with 7 strangers. We was originally supposed to be on a mixed floor as well, so it would have been 3 other girls and 4 boys. However, more girls had applied for that accommodation, so we ended up in an all-girls floor. So having my own room eased me a little bit, especially because due to my anxiety, I have trouble sleeping sometimes. Sometimes I just need my own space. So I was really, really thankful that I had my own room. Although over here in over here in England, I'm not sure if it's for the whole of the UK, you do tend to have your own rooms. I was also lucky that I had the option of an ensuite. A friend of mine had shared bathroom, said it wasn't the best, but I really enjoyed having my own, having an ensuite, just for the fact that I like to get up early in the morning, get showered first thing, and stuff like that. And having an ensuite allowed me to do that. Having a shared bathroom wouldn't really allow me to have that unless I'd got up earlier than whoever I'd be sharing with. And there'd be that constant fear of somebody being in or somebody wanting to come in while you were in, that kind of thing. So that eased it a lot for me. Luckily, I was on a floor with like-minded students. We prefer quiet night-ins. We all got on really well, especially to begin with. As time grew on, I think we got a little too comfortable around each other, and like a few more arguments broke out and stuff like that. But yeah. My main worry was people stealing my food or expecting me to do all the cooking and cleaning, because I can cook. I wasn't sure if the people I'd be living with could. Most of them could, so after, meeting them and that. We did have a case of somebody had been taking food. None of my stuff had been taken, but some of the other girls' stuff had. We'd had cases where people had used our kitchen equipment without asking and then left it in the sink. And you know what? It's gonna happen. We're all students. We don't have the best financial state, so you can expect it. We couldn't have locks in our cupboards, and we shared fridges. We had a shelf in a fridge, and that was it, and then a drawer in the freezer. But what I did to help deal with it, to help overcome it, was anything that could go in the cupboard, I had some in a box in my bedroom. That was my stuff. I'd take it into the kitchen as and when I needed it. I did leave some stuff in my cupboard so it didn't look like, I wasn't willing to share. We tend to share milk on our floor because we didn't have space for us all to have milk. So that was never really an issue. But it's not a case of one person constantly steals your food. I'm to this day not sure who had taken what. I just know that some of the other girls' stuff had gone missing. I know a few times one of my trays, my baking trays had been used and not washed. It had just been left on the side. Me and two of the other girls had the same cutlery, and the amounts of times one of us would go to get cutlery and would not have it, and the other two had ended up with it split between them, was unreal. But you communicate, you talk. Like I said, luckily I was on a floor where they were nice. Like I said, as things got towards the end of us all living together, it got a bit tense and a bit awkward at times. But like I said, I think we got too comfortable living with each other. But it's great to have had that experience. I mean, I got to the point where I was thinking of commuting, staying at home and travelling. I mean, it'd been an hour and a half to 2 hours travel time for me, especially because I don't drive. And it'd been 2 trains and a bus, or 2 buses and 1 train. So I was kind of glad that I had that experience. I learnt new recipes. I learnt how to live on a budget. How to fit cooking around what you do. So I used to meal prep while I was at uni. I would do all my cooking on a Monday afternoon because I'd have it off. And then I would freeze portions and get them out the night before. So I would make, like, I don't know, bolognese and curry, put them in Chinese tubs and put them in the freezer. So then all I'd have to do was do pasta or rice, which takes about 5-10 minutes in the pan, and then microwave the tub for 3 to 5 minutes. You learn to adapt. I also learned to constantly keep some bread in the freezer, mainly because it was one of the things I used to forget the most, because I would either have late breakfast because I'd have a late start, and then only end up eating 2 meals a day, or I'd have breakfast and then I'd have a massive time frame of lectures, so then I'd be finishing around 4 and have missed lunch, so then I'd have had an early tea. So it's very rare that I'd had 3 meals a day, so I would always forget certain stuff. But put yourself out there and try and introduce yourself. Now, when I first moved in, there was only me and 2 of the other girls. One of them I'd spoken in the group chat. So it was easy for me to settle in better that first night, because the 3 of us would sat in the kitchen. I think they must have heard me in the kitchen, and they'd come in, and we just sat and talked. We ended up going to bed at 3 in the morning that night, just because we'd got talking, got to know each other, learned things quite fast about each other. I became real good friends with one of them, still am now, we still talk all the time. And then it was slowly one more person arrived at a time the next day. So I think that really helped me move. I also stayed the first night, but a friend of mine went home for the first night after moving the stuff in and stayed the second, and they said it took them longer to get over being away from home. I didn't really feel homesick. Like I said, I am a much more independent person. I find moving quite easy. I prefer to keep to myself. I prefer doing things for myself, just because it gets rid of the anxiety of, well, what if it's not right? Or what if I run late because whoever was cooking started cooking late, stuff like that. But I'm going to just put it straight out there. Yes, there will be at least one person you don't get along with, especially if you're in a large floor like I was. Yes, food will go missing. It's bound to happen. Especially milk. You're students, you have a tight budget. But don't be aggressive about it. Don't be quite sour towards it. Just politely bring it up. And you're more likely to get a nicer response. For me, moving away wasn't so hard. I know a few people that have struggled with it, especially because of anxiety. I found that I was talking to my mum a lot when I first moved. During Freshers Week. Then as I got lectures and I was talking to her less, I actually found it easier. So one thing I would recommend is, for at least your first 48 hours, have no communication with your parents unless it's an emergency. And it just will help you move better. Obviously, if you are going to a boarding school or a private school and you're younger, probably 24 hours, depending on obviously how old you actually are. But for university, definitely wait about 48 hours. Find and schedule time to talk to them. I didn't really do that. I'd call as and when. But now that I've moved out, I'm in a flat, I do schedule time. Tuesdays is specifically to talk to my nan because that's when she's off work. I know when my mum's at work, so I try and call her when she's not. And then I pretty much call my little brother as and when. Especially because it's some holidays now. This is when we would normally annoy each other and hate each other and be in an argument over something. So he's probably we're both feeling a bit, I don't know, not quite lonely, but it's a weird feeling to not have that normality. But make sure you schedule time to talk to people. If you aren't going to the same university as your friend, schedule time to talk to your friend. Me and my best friend really struggled to talk while we were at uni. We had complete opposite timetables, so when she was free, I was in lectures, and vice versa. Try to organise trips home, or organise them coming to you, organise trying to meet up with old friends, but make new friends. New friends make the transition a hell of a lot easier. I struggled to make friends. I think it was day 2 or 3 before I started talking to someone, because during Freshers Week we had get to know you classes kind of thing. So you were going to your lectures, but you weren't doing anything lecture-like. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 days before I started having proper conversations rather than just are you in this, trying to see if you're in the right place. I made a good friend quite fast, and I consider myself quite lucky for that, because usually, it takes you a good few months before you find a good friend. But I also found pushing myself out of my comfort zones has helped the transition easier. So I became a student ambassador, meaning I have to talk to way more people than I would normally. But you learn interesting facts about the university. You get to know your way around better. I also became part of a society full of volunteering and fundraising, which is something I enjoy. So I thought it'd be a good way for me to throw myself into university life completely without being completely out of my comfort zone. So, do things like that. I mean, I go to karaoke on a Thursday at the pub. I would have never have done that before. And it actually makes dealing with your anxiety easier because you're pushing it further and you're fighting back more and you're expanding your comfort zones. So then it's easier to deal with because you're not having it at as high capacity as you did of the littlest things anymore because you're doing much bigger things. I no longer experience severe anxiety when travelling on public transport anymore, and that used to be a huge thing for me, and it's because I forced myself to go on it more. Every single Saturday for the past few weeks, me and my boyfriend go to see his family, and it's a 45-minute bus. And it was different when I was at college because it was a must. It was, you have to do this to be able to get to college. But because now I do it because I want to, it makes it easier. I have to travel for volunteering now. I used to come on trips to town with one of the girls that I used to live with. We used to go to the cinema, to the shops, to go look at any of the historical sites we could find online. Pushing yourself outside of these comfort zones makes it easier to deal with your anxiety because it's no longer over on the little things. So it's easy to do day to day. Yes, you have some days where it's big on everything. I mean, I'd have the odd day where I couldn't go into the kitchen because of it, which is why I was thankful I had some food in my room. Yes, it wasn't the best, but, you're still eating that day. You felt rubbish the day after because you're not eating properly, but... So, I guess top 3 tips for uni. Don't stress about who you're going to end up living with and if they're going to steal your food. Because guaranteed, it's going to happen. You're going to end up with at least one person that you get along with at first and then don't. Maybe you don't get on with them straight away. Tip 2, push yourself out of your comfort zones. Start off small. Maybe, I don't know, just go stand in the pub for 5 minutes. I don't know, try going to a club. I tried that. I started having fun, and it kind of hit me all at once when the huge rush of people came in. Maybe you do join a society. Tip 3, the final tip. Don't completely exclude yourself, but don't try and force yourself into friendships. Just be yourself. And I don't know, I always was scared of the idea of uni, and you're excited at the same time, but I don't know, the second you're there, your mindset changes. And I'm really glad I did it. Really glad I'm not going to be in student accommodation next year, though. Sometimes things can get a little loud, and I like my sleep. I like napping during the day as well, and sometimes you just can't have that. I like having my own space. But I would highly recommend staying in student accommodation for your first year. An absolute must. I mean, it's up to you how you want to live your student life, but I would definitely recommend student accommodation. You don't have to go out drinking and get drunk like every movie and book has ever told you to. I barely went out, barely drunk, and guarantee I've probably had more fun than some of those people that are out every week. I also had a lot more money for it, and I've brought pets with it because I had that money left over. And not gonna lie, pets are better than one night and I can't remember because you're too drunk. But you'll find your way pretty fast, especially if you are quite independent. If you are a dependent person and you rely on your parents or your guardians, definitely going to student accommodation in your first year. It will force you to have that push, and it will set you up for your adult life. But you need that time living in student accommodation to give you an idea of adult life. You know, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. But yeah, student accommodation is a must. And yes, you know, there's negatives to it, there's negatives to everything. But you need to get outside those comfort zones. So on that note, I'm going to end the video here and I'll see you next week. Bye!